Let's bring in Matt Gorman, Targeted Victory Executive Vice President, and Marie Harf, Fox News contributor and former State Department spokesperson under President Obama. So here's what the Nikki Haley op-ed said in part, quote, "If you like his policies but are put off by his tone or excesses, consider the cost of the past 4 years. I don't agree with Mr. Trump 100% of the time, but I do agree with him most of the time, and I disagree with Ms. Harris nearly all the time. That makes this an easy call." Marie, it's a very Reagan-like statement when he famously said, if you agree with somebody 80% of the time, they're your ally, not your 20% traitor. Will that potentially move the needle among women who haven't voted yet, who are waiting until tomorrow, trying to make the decision between voting for Trump or voting for Harris?
Well, John, it's interesting. The Trump campaign knows they have a serious problem because women have been fleeing from Donald Trump to Kamala Harris, including independent women, including many Republican women. All these latest polls, especially in the blue wall states, Michigan, Wisconsin, even that outlier Iowa poll, showed that especially older white women were really overwhelmingly now going towards Harris because, and look, that's a group that delivered the presidency in large part to Donald Trump in 2016, because of the repeal of Roe versus Wade, his language on the campaign trail. Look, you can write all the op-eds you want if you're Nikki Haley, but Donald Trump has not asked her to campaign for him, hasn't had her join him at rallies. He has done nothing to bring women back into the fold. And when his closing message is, I will protect you if you want me to or not, the Trump campaign has a serious problem, and my prediction is that women are going to put Kamala Harris over the top here because they are mad, and we're seeing it in every demographic and in every poll. All
right, but according to New York Times columnist Ross Douthat, who had a really interesting op-ed today, Matt, there is a crisis of confidence with Kamala Harris. He wrote, quote, "Notwithstanding the great rally around her after Biden's bow out, the Democratic nominee for president is still the Dan Quayle-like figure that almost everybody saw just a little while ago. Still vague on policy and painful in extended interviews, still carrying a record as a vice president that inspires little confidence in her abilities." So late deciders who are waiting until tomorrow to cast their ballot, they look at Kamala Harris, and many people say, you see an empty vessel. You see somebody who hasn't articulated policies. What are they to hang their hat on when they pull the lever?
Well, you're right. And as you teased before, Axios wrote a long piece calling her the no-comment candidate. You're right. On a list of issues which she hasn't really weighed in on. She took one side in 2019, and now she refuses to say where she stands right now. But look, this is going to be, in many ways, a gender gap election. Elise Stefanik, as you said before, was exactly right on this. The NBC News poll that came out yesterday shows Trump doing better with men than Harris is doing with women, and whatever side gets more of those supporters to their side is going to win this election. If we need to outperform with men, then we lose women by. This election is going to be won by us.
All right, Marie, here is a potential point of concern for Democrats. Even Jim Messina said that this is a little scary. Early voting in Pennsylvania, way down for Democrats, down a little bit for the GOP. In 2024, Democrat early vote return 971,615, Republican 571,725. Compare that to 2020. It was 1,702,000 for the Democrats, 623,404 for the Republicans. The Democrats this year, Marie, are down 42%. The Republicans are down 8%. Again, Jim Messina called it scary. What do you call it?
Well, look, I think this whole election season has been scary in many ways, but my friends I've talked, and it's almost over, thank goodness, but my friends I've talked to working on the campaign who are looking at these numbers every day, you know, tell me, you can't compare things to 2020, especially with early vote. It was such a different election, and there is a question about whether this Republican early vote surge that we're seeing is just cannibalizing from Election Day, because now the RNC has really been pushing Republicans to get out early and vote. Look, I feel very confident about our chances in Pennsylvania, in large part because we know that groups like women vote more than men, and we have seen that there's been all this concern about black men, and in the latest polls, they're really holding steady for Democrats. So I'm worried about these numbers. Everybody has to get out and vote tomorrow, but Democrats knocked on 2,000 doors a minute in Pennsylvania this weekend. That is a get-out-the-vote operation that Elon Musk cannot come close to matching.
Yeah. Now, in some states, there has been a GOP surge, but there in Pennsylvania, it's actually declined, Matt, in the number of Republicans who voted early. But here's the problem for Democrats. They're down in the early vote. They typically don't make that up on Election Day. Republicans typically rule the day on Election Day. So if you've got that decline in early voting for Democrats, plus the Republicans' inherent advantage or historic advantage on Election Day, what does that say about Pennsylvania?
Yeah, Republicans I talked to are pretty heartened with what they're seeing in Pennsylvania right now. And you mentioned it a couple minutes ago as well, talking with Sandra. One of the first things I'd be looking for is Philly turnout, along with Wayne County turnout out in Michigan. Those are going to be telling me what is the African-American turnout at with these levels. You know, at a certain level, it could be good for Harris. But right now, if you look at where things are in Georgia, North Carolina, African-American turnout's way down. If that continues, that trend in Pennsylvania and Michigan, that could be a very good sign as we go into the night for President Trump. So that is one of those things I'll be watching for very, very closely.
All right. So, again, all we can do is sit back and wait and see what happens. Marie, I think you're one of those Democrats who is nauseously optimistic.
That's right.
That she'll pull it out in the end one of these days.
Exactly.
And the new number from Nate Silver is up by 0.3%. You know, a whiff of air, a misplaced remark, a better than expected ground game can change those numbers. John Roberts, your predecessor here the previous hour, said what an exciting day it is. Let me tell you, I've been through 2 presidential campaigns. On the last day, this is the worst day of your life. They're drinking Maalox. They're nervous. They're not sleeping. The candidate is on the edge. They're on the edge. This is the worst time. And John, as a journalist, thinks it's a great time. Let me tell you, inside the campaign,
Christmas Eve and he's waiting for Santa Claus. And Carl is, thinking that it's more like Halloween in terms of terrifying moments for them. This is Van Jones, a CNN political commentator, just a short time ago this morning. Actually, watch this.
I'm worried. Philadelphia is where we've got to run up a big margin. But Philly overall has been trending down, not in terms of going toward the Republicans, just people not getting out to vote. The other thing that has me worried is that the Jewish vote in the suburban areas, Biden won the Jewish vote by 70%, 70-30 last time. Some polls show Kamla at 50-50. That is 70,000 votes.
So, Juan, let me go to you on that. When you look at Pennsylvania, Philadelphia County is probably the most important place for Democrats. And Brian Yanis yesterday reported that Kamala Harris would need to drive it up by about 600,000 votes in order to nail down that part of Pennsylvania. Do you have the same concerns as Van Jones when you look at the early voting numbers and who's turning out?
No, it's a little different. I mean, he breaks it down in terms of the Jewish vote, for example. I don't see it breaking 50. I don't see that at all. But I think what it is who's getting out to vote. And it's a matter of making sure that people actually are making the effort to get in those long lines that we've seen on screen. And so right there, the point is drive up the numbers. Get your folks to the polls. And I think what we've seen today in terms of final pitches coming from the candidates is Harris has been very smooth in saying, you know, let's be forward-looking. Let's come together. Let's be inclusive. She's not even mentioning Trump by name. On the other hand, I think you've seen, as we showed moments ago, Trump is pretty angry still about, the Iowa poll. He's upset about, what's going on in terms of potential Democrats' misbehavior and stolen elections. He's raging about microphones. So to me, I think, he's going to make an effort, I think, to get like a popular female podcast host out tonight to campaign with him. Why? Because he's concerned about those people in the suburbs, those women in the suburbs that Van Jones is talking about.
Well, we've done a lot of polling in the 7 swing states, and we're getting very tight numbers, as I think most are. And rest assured, we're reporting the numbers as accurately as we can. I think what may exist, Martha, which hasn't been discussed much, is that in 2016 and 2020, there was an undercount in the swing states of the Trump vote. And I still believe the discouraged voters, the undecided, the shy Trump voters do exist. And all of those groups are going to break for Trump. So that could be worth a point or two more for the former president. Not guaranteed, but I think that gives him a somewhat greater chance of winning than perhaps the odds makers are now suggesting.
So very interesting. You know, Lee Carter, what we've been told is that many pollsters have beaten that out of their system, that they have waited for that, and that over the course of, this is now the third election, really unprecedented, of watching one candidate, and that they have really accounted for that voter who doesn't necessarily want to speak to the pollster and is a Trump supporter. Do you agree or disagree?
I think it's almost impossible to account for it, because I don't think it's just about how you ask the question. It's our society today. About 28% of Americans say that they have lied to a family member about who they are going to vote for. That's about a quarter of Americans are lying to a family member. Why would you, if you're going to lie to a family member, why would you not lie to a pollster? Why would you not be in that same situation? We are so very polarized that we've decided if you disagree with us, that the other side is evil. And that puts us in a really, really bad position. I think pollsters have gotten better at it, but when you still look at some of the data that's coming out, they're suggesting that, you know, Democrats are between 16 and 20% more likely to answer polls than Republicans. I think there's a reason for that. And I don't think that it's people are lying. I think that they're just not willing to tell, you know, anybody what it is that they're going to do. And I think we still have shy Trump voters. I think we have a lot of people who are carrying that around. I think Kamla has a theory that there are shy Harris voters as well, which I think is interesting. Are they sort of like shy like Liz Cheney's? I'm not sure that that exists, but that is something that I think they're counting on. We've seen some of their advertisements about, you know, abortion and sort of your vote is your vote, it's private. With Julia Roberts, that advertisement is based on that insight, but I'm just not sure